Just a quick editor's note before we get started, folks. We had an audio issue from a stupid cat that messed up Naseem's microphone, and that screwed up our whole recording. Thank goodness Squadcast has automated backups in the cloud. Thank you, Squadcast, for saving our butts. With that being said, our audio's not quite as pristine as we prefer, but we're real happy that we got the conversation. So without further ado, let's start the show. Good morning, good evening, and good night, my terrible listeners. You're tuned in to Terrible Sex with Naseem. I'm producer Dan, and each week I have the honor of bringing you registered nurse, aspiring sex educator, polyamory enthusiast, and true woman of the people, Naseem. She tells us stories, answers our questions, and helps us feel more comfortable around our world's infinite variety of sexuality. Send your questions, comments, voice memos, and especially your own terrible sex stories. This show's the best when you're involved. All our contact info is on the website at terriblesexwithnaseem.com. Hey, Naseem.
Hey, Dan.
How's it going?
Great. Today was a great day.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What'd you get into today?
Well, it started off kind of weird because, let me back up a little bit. Yesterday, I had a doctor's appointment, and I had to get a pH study. I don't know if you know what that is.
I'm familiar with the pH.
Yeah. So,
Acid, basic. There needs to be homeostasis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I have some gastrointestinal issues, and namely GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease.
Yeah.
Yep. So they put a probe up my nose and down my throat that I had to wear for 24 hours.
Oh, what a delight.
What a delight. The true delight was when I went back today and got it removed. So that was the highlight. That's how we started.
Yeah, well,
today.
I mean, that does sound pretty nice to get that thing out of your face.
Yeah, it was great. Of course, though, all night, no heartburn, no symptoms. An hour after I take the thing out, raging heartburn.
And it was there to detect what was going on with your heartburn, I assume?
Yeah, exactly. So all that trouble for pretty much nothing. But we'll see. And then I, hung out with the neighbor all afternoon. We went on a impromptu adventure. I just wanted to see what they were up to. And the next thing you know, we're like driving all over Chicagoland, went out to dinner. It was like a great time.
Nice.
And
I love a good impromptu adventure.
Yeah, it was fun. And now I'm here with you recording about my terrible sex life.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm excited to be here with you. Now, just to catch up on my life real quick, I'm sorry to say to you, to all the terrible listeners, our grumpy old bulldog Dumpster has crossed the Rainbow Bridge.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Dan.
Thank you very much. It was a tough week last week. I think we're all feeling a little better around the house today. And we frankly had about the best day ever with old Dumpster the day before he passed.
Did you have someone come to the house or did you have to take him in?
We did. Old Dumpster ended up with a very aggressive cancer of the arteries, and he had some leaking of blood around his heart. I forget what that's called. It's in the big sac around the heart where it fills up with blood.
The pericardial space?
Yes, exactly. And then basically it gives the effect of heart failure because the heart can't work the way it's supposed to with all the pressure around the outside of it.
Right.
So they were able to drain the fluid off the heart. He was able to have another good few days after that, feeling good. But we talked to the emergency vet. We talked to our regular vet. We talked to a good friend of ours that was a vet, and they all were of the same opinion that this was this was the end for old Dump, and we were able to be with him while he was comfortable. We were able to have a hell of a day. We got outside, went for walks, went to the park. He ate all the tall grass he could eat. He at least had 2 hamburgers to himself that he didn't even have to fight for. Maybe we should have made him fight for it. He would have liked that. He had his own ice cream cone. and he got a shit ton of cuddles. So
Oh.
it was a good send off for old Dump, and we're sad to see him go, but we're happy we didn't have to do it while he was in all kinds of pain. So
Yeah, that's always a hard decision. We had to unfortunately put our girl Brandy down a couple weeks ago,
yeah.
and that was really tough too because I wasn't there. You know, I had
Oh, I
to
bet.
I had to give the okay over the phone with the vet, and it was tough. It was really, really hard. But, it's I think a lot about, like, my own patience, and
Hmm.
with, like, human patience, and I hate to see, you know, old grandmas dying of cancer, and they just sit there in the bed, and there's nothing you just want them to go peacefully
Right.
and not have to suffer, and it's like, if I feel that way about my human patients that I barely know, this dog that means so much to me, I gotta do right by her, and it was the right decision, and you made the right decision, and it doesn't always feel that way, but, you know, it's
Yeah, I
you know,
appreciate that. It was the right decision, but it's still, yeah, it's sad.
it's a kick in the shit.
Yeah,
It sucks.
got to
Uh,
feel some feelings.
I'm still really sorry about Dumpster, and know that's tough.
Thank you, and I feel the same for old Brandy.
Mm.
So here's to him.
Here's to
And
'em.
yeah, what a fun way to start this exciting podcast.
Well, it's gonna get more fun and more interesting from here, that I can guarantee.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so, uh, I'm gonna tell you, and I've alluded to this story before, I think I've mentioned it a couple times in
Ooh,
previous episodes,
ooh,
but we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna talk about the accidental threesome I had.
whoa! I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, so this I've had 3 threesomes,
Count them.
um, count 'em. This was the first one.
The first one.
The first one, and it was completely by accident. Wasn't planning on the night going this way. So this was pretty recent, actually. It was within the last, I think it was within the last year. So I've had 3 threesomes.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first one. Was not planning on it to go this way. And it started with my husband was on a date with a lady, um, who he is no longer seeing. And they dated for a very short amount of time.
Okay.
But he was on a date with her.
Now this is your husband at the time on a date in your polyamorous relationship.
Yes, he's still my husband, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yes.
So still married to Jar. That's going well. And this
And
was
I'm
like,
happy to hear that.
yes. This is the first person that he had, uh first, second? I don't remember. This was a person that he had met early on in our polyamory uh journey together. And I think this might have been their first or second date. I don't remember. But he went on this date, and while he was out with her, I had my best friend over at our house. She was in town visiting, and she was just hanging out with me. I don't even know what we were doing. We might have been drinking. We were probably listening to music,
Having some wine, listening
having
to
someone
tunes,
talking about boys,
talking girl talk
that kind of
about
shit.
boys.
Yeah.
I'm with
And
you.
and she's also polyamorous. She actually was the one who turned me on to the idea. And she has been in the lifestyle for quite a bit longer than I have been. And I've learned a lot from her. I always tell her, I'm like, you should have this podcast.
Let's get her on.
I need to get her on and keep talking to her about coming on the show. So maybe one day.
I can't
Um,
wait.
yeah. So she and I were hanging out. Jar comes home from his date. We're just sort of debriefing on how the date went. He was, he had a good time. Nothing like really physical happened with her, and we're sort of just chatting. And I was having feelings about things. Like part of the reason why my friend had come over to my house was I was having just a shitty day.
Hmm.
I like wasn't doing very well mentally. was just in my feelings about everything. I was kind of in a rocky relationship with this guy. Jar was on this date. I was feeling like kind of shitty in general, so she came over. I also hadn't slept for 2 days because I work nights and don't sleep very well during the day, and I was just super exhausted as well. Jar comes home, my friend's over, the 3 of us are chatting around the dining room table, and I'm just feeling really mopey and sad, and I just look at the 2 of them and I'm like, "I need a cuddle puddle." Like, I just need so if you subscribe to the whole, like, love languages thing.
Yep. I do. I do. Good book. A little more about Jesus than I would prefer
Yeah,
in my relationship books.
it's definitely a Christian thing for sure.
But I can tell you that my understanding of my marriage and my relationship got much better after reading that book, and I would recommend anybody who wants to be in a reasonable relationship read it.
Because it really helps you, like, understand where your partner's coming from and kind of where you're coming from. Um,
It it changed the way that I imagine the golden rule works.
yeah,
I
that's a
always
really
thought
good
the
way of putting
golden
it.
rule was treat others the way that I want to be treated. But I think after reading that, I understand it more of try to understand people's needs the way I want my needs understood.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that's an excellent explanation and
Sorry to
way of
cut you
looking
off
at it.
there, but
No,
I'm a believer in that book. It's done a good job for me.
good, and I think it's done a good job for a lot of people.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, there's a cat that is trying to get my attention right now. Um,
We'll
so
give that cat a
so if you
pet or
hear
a cuddle.
so if you hear purring in the background, that's what that's about. Hello, Meatball. How are you doing? um, so anyway, about the love languages thing, mine is physical touch. That
Yeah.
is how I kind of reset in a lot of ways. Like if I'm having a bad day, I need a hug, I need some cuddles, something. If I don't get that, start to feel like my energy, my life force is being drained from me.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that's what I needed. I needed physical contact. And I was like, okay, I need a cuddle puddle. Let's go in the bedroom. And that's all it was supposed to be. The intention was to have the 2 people who I love most and trust most in my life just hold me. That's all I needed.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, right? Totally
In
reasonable.
in real PG at the most.
Real PG at the most. So, what's not PG is this cat who's starting to bite me. Anyway, um,
That ain't
ser
PG at all.
seriously, Meatball, what are you doing? There's a rule in this house, though, that if Meatball comes to, pet me, if she wants attention, I have to give her attention. It's like a house rule. So and I follow the rules.
So there's one thing I know about you, Naseem. Rule follower. I'm gonna add that to the intro. And I think you unplugged your mic. To our terrible listeners, you should see Naseem scrambling to get her microphone plugged back in. It's pretty hilarious. I can't hear you at all. Now she's trying to talk to me through a video screen. Nope. Oh my goodness. What a fucking mess. This podcast. What are you doing still listening to this? You got all kinds of choices. What the hell happened over there?
Well, aforementioned cat got up in my business and disconnected my cords. So, this will be an interesting editing nightmare for you. Anyway,
Well,
um,
solid recovery.
solid recovery? Anyway, so where were we? Where was I? Oh, right. I was cuddling with the 2 people I trust most in the world. And we're in bed. I'm in the middle. It's me in the middle. Jar is to my right, and my best friend is to my left.
Now, let me ask you a little more about your relationship with your best friend.
Yes.
Have you guys made out before? Have you done more than hold hands?
Oh
Have you
God, no.
experimented?
No.
All right.
I've known this woman since I was 14. We used to be we met in high school. We were doubles partners in
Ooh,
tennis.
nice.
Um, that's how we met, and
You guys have the
we
tennis skirts?
don't make it weird, Dan. Yes, we did have the tennis skirts,
Nice.
and the tennis dresses and things, and uh, we met that way and just bonded over music and boys, and we used to tell, like I've never told anyone this before. We would, like, have sleepovers, usually at her house, I think only at her house, and, we would, like, play this game where one person would start telling, like, a raunchy story, like, make-believe story about, like, our fantasy, and then we would, like, pass the torch to the next person, and then the other person had to continue the story, and we'd, like, go back and forth that way. It was like the storytelling game that was, like, usually involved, like, sex and boys, but anyway.
I think when we have her on the podcast, you guys are playing that game.
Okay. Oh, she'll kill me when she finds out that I told you guys this. So anyway, so we've been friends this entire time, like best friends for 20 years. Which is why I say I she's one of the people I trust the most.
Sure.
I probably trust her more than my husband, honestly. So, we are in bed, and I don't quite remember how things started. I think it was Jar. I honestly think it was my husband.
Oh, Jar.
What a smooth operator. He got a little handsy. And at first, he got a little handsy with me, right? He's on my right. There's a hand coming over. He's like stroking my leg, all loving and supportive as I'm talking about my issues. And the next thing I know, it's like his hands kind of like creeping up towards my boob. And then I'm feeling another hand kind of on the other side of me, but it's not his hand and it's not my hand. It's her hand. And she so yeah, so she starts touching me, he starts touching me. They start touching each other, like he starts like his hand starts slipping under her shirt and he starts feeling her up and I just like, are we doing this? This is happening? And things are starting to get a little hot and a little heavy, and
Yeah.
I stop us, and I do a timeout,
Time out.
and I say, "Jar, do you consent to this? Because consent is very important in our world."
It certainly is.
And Jar says, "Yes, I consent to this." And asked my friend, I said, "Do you consent to this?" And she's like, "Yes, I consent to this." And she asked me, she's like, "Naseem, do you consent to this?" And I say, "Yes, I consent to this." So then we're like, "Okay, proceed."
Now, let me stop you there again. To all our terrible listeners, especially the young ones, that you stop and you think, well, I don't want to make a thing awkward because we got to ask for a thing. Can't I just go in and grab somebody's face and kiss them? The answer is no. And it's hot as hell to hear somebody say, yes, I consent. Now let's
It
make out.
Yeah, it was
So
super hot, and it was
don't
all
worry about getting awkward or ruining a moment because when you get that consent, the moment is on and it's awesome.
it is awesome, and
Continue.
especially because it means that, oh, some fun is about to happen,
Yeah.
and, I say it was an accidental threesome, but it wasn't, because at that point, it became intentional, right?
I'd say more impromptu than accidental.
Yes, exactly, let's say that. It was an impromptu threesome. So, my friend and I, over the course of our 20-year friendship, we've talked a lot about sex, and we go into very explicit detail about things that we've done, things that have happened to us, very graphic. And I've always, heard these stories about the things that she's done. And so now I was getting like a front row seat to all of the things I've heard about in the past. And there was a part of me that was feeling like, oh man, she's like way more experienced than me. she's going to be really good at this. And I was feeling a little insecure, not going to lie. I was a little insecure, but again, trust this woman with my life.
Yeah.
Okay. And I trust my husband, and I know that they would never do anything to make me uncomfortable, which I think is super important when you're in a kind of dynamic like this, is that there has to, I mean, it's not always the case, but for me, I needed that sense of um, trust. I needed to know that I wasn't going to feel like an outsider. Um, so we are, there's a lot of fondling. My shirt comes off. Jar's naked at this point. And uh, my friend and I decide that we are going to take turns blowing my husband.
And you've never done this. This is threesome number one for old Naseem.
This is threesome number one for Naseem. The only
How about
threesome
for Jar?
I think it was also his first one.
Okay.
All the threesomes that we've had since were with another man. This is my only threesome I've had with another woman.
Really?
So yes. So
can I
please,
I gotta
ask.
get personal. I gotta get personal.
This is a personal show. I'm talking about.
I know, but I need specifics right now.
Uh-huh.
About your other threesomes.
Okay. They were with the same guy.
Were there high fives?
Yes.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to know. That's any fantasy I've ever had that had anything to do with that was real broy and a lot of high fives.
There were definitely high fives. Anyway.
Awesome.
So I back to my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we decide that we're going to. Oh, we didn't even decide. It just sort of happened. I am going down on Jar, and after a little bit, my friend like taps me on the shoulder, and we basically like tag each other out. It was like pro wrestling. We like tap each other out, and then I'm on top. I'm going down on him. Then she's going down on him, and it was just like. It was really hot, but also really funny. And then
I love that they're not mutually exclusive.
No, and then at one point, like we both go down on him on the same time. So like he called it corn cobbing.
All right.
So like his dick's in the middle, her mouth is on one side of it, mine's on the other.
That makes sense.
And that was a lot of fun.
I bet it was.
And at this point, this I will remember for the rest of my life. Okay?
Okay.
I'm going down on him. He's got his hands up her, right? And she's having a great time. Because again, he's good with his hands. And I told her this, but I don't know if she really believed me. Like, didn't know how good it was. And I just remember she is like, now mind you, yes, she's my best friend of 20 years, but I've never like seen her fully naked. Like that was like an level of intimacy that like we had not had before this moment.
Sure.
So she's like her pelvis is like right next to me, right? And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, this bitch is gonna squirt in my hair.
And did she?
No. I mean, I say that with disappointment, but I'm glad she didn't, because that would have just like brought another level to things that I just like wasn't ready for at the time.
Listen, one of my favorite aunts of all time once told me, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Oh, sure. Nothing I say is factual.
This podcast is fake as hell.
It's fake as hell. No, this really happened. By the way, I did get permission from both of these parties to tell this story.
Good.
For the record. So.
And I never asked. I assume Jar's cool with us using his name.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no.
Thanks, Jar.
Thanks, Jar. You're a pal.
I mean,
Um,
we're several episodes in by now. I assume he's heard one or two.
he
I
will
think,
not. He will not listen to the show unless I tell him. Like, this is an episode you should listen to,
okay.
because he doesn't. He told me that he does not want me to feel weird and feel like I need to censor myself on his behalf. He wants me to be as truthful and as open as possible. So if I feel weird about sharing anything because I think he's listening, he doesn't want that to happen. So he just doesn't listen
Man,
until
that
and
jar sure seems like a delight.
he's a hell of a guy.
I look forward to meeting him sometime.
He's a hell of a guy. Awkward as shit, but a hell of a guy.
Some of my favorite people are awkward as shit.
Yeah, he's great. I think you two would get along really well. So yeah, so and everything ends. Jar finishes. I think I did too.
She
My
almost
friend
did right in your hair.
Yeah, she's just along for the ride. Um, and then, um and then we just, like, crash in the bed. Now, I'll remind you, I was exhausted. I was exhausted because, again, hadn't slept in, like, 2 days because of work. I was having a really crappy day overall. This happened, and then the drop set in, which and I don't know if you're familiar with drop at all. It's a term that's often used in the kink and BDSM community, um, regarding the, uh when you have, like, a heightened experience
Mhm.
and the experience ends, those endorphins and the adrenaline and everything, like, leaves your body. So you go from a really high to baseline, but baseline feels like the lowest of low. We call that drop.
Got it.
And drop started to set in for me. Even though it wasn't like a kink or BDSM experience, like, you
There's
can
still
still
plenty of endorphins going.
yeah, and you can still have drop from any kind of situation. You can have drop from, like, coming back from vacation. You had this, like,
Oh,
great time, and then
I
you
do
come
every
back and you're like
time.
yeah, exactly. That's like a form of drop.
Sure.
So, I start to drop, and I'm already tired. I was already feeling like shit earlier in the day, and I start to have these feelings of, um, I become hypercritical. I become super aware of my body. I start comparing myself to my friend, which is stupid. Um, and I start crying. Not out of sadness, but just out of, I think it was just like all that emotional
Yeah, a lot of
stuff
feelings going on.
happening. I had a lot of feelings going on. And then this thing happened that I wasn't expecting, but I did consent to. And I consented the entire way through, and I was happy it happened. But in that moment, I was just spent. And I just started crying, and then the 2 of them were really lovely, and they just held me and told me that I was doing great and I was a great person, and did all the things to take care of me in my emotional state at that time.
You got the cuddle puddle.
I got my cuddle puddle, and then I fucking passed out. I fell asleep and, like, probably was snoring, for at least an hour. I don't know how long I was out. Um, and it was a good experience, and I'm really glad that if I was for my first threesome, it was with those 2 people. Um,
Nice.
and now my best friend and my husband, they talk all the time. Like, they, like and it's one of those things where sometimes she'll be like, "How would you feel if, like, I dated Jar?" And I'd be like, "Whatever, fine." Actually, one thing that did happen, which I thought was really an interesting moment during the threesome, was my friend asked me, she's like, "Naseem, can I kiss your husband on the mouth?" And I said, "No, you may not."
Yeah,
And
put her in her
l
place.
later, Jar told me that that was super fucking hot, that I
Yeah.
set a boundary and was assertive about something that I wanted and didn't want. And he was like, "I'm so glad that you didn't let her." Not that it was like a problem if you said yes, but just the fact that you stood up and you like said exactly what you wanted and didn't want, and you set that boundary. He's like, "That was so hot." And I'm like, "Cool."
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it was a fun one.
That sounds like a wonderful experience. Totally, totally, totally outside the boundaries of what this show's supposed to be about.
Oh, terrible sex? Well,
Yeah,
it was
come on. Come
I
on.
know.
We got a thing that we're trying to do here.
But it's outside of the realm of a lot of people's sexuality,
It
right?
certainly is. No, I
A
think that
lot
was a great story. I loved it. I
I
loved it.
think a lot of people would be uncomfortable with the idea of their husband and their best friend having any kind of intimacy.
Now, do you consider yourself bi? I never asked.
I am
Are you
not
into the
bisexual.
gals? Okay.
I can appreciate the female form. I can appreciate the non-binary form. Um, it's I can find a person attractive and not be attracted to them.
Sure.
Um, I have dated a woman in the past. When when I was in college, there was a woman who I was very attracted to and had romantic feelings for, and, like, we went on dates and we fooled around a little bit, like, waist up, but I could not see myself I don't see myself interacting with a vagina, frankly, other than my own. So, um,
Fair enough.
but that's just me. But, like, my friend, I didn't go like, that was a kind of an unspoken understanding that the 2 of us had, was that we were not gonna go near each other's like, we were not gonna touch each other down there.
Sure.
Like, tits are one thing, but, like, not really into the vag myself. She's bisexual, I am not, but
Well,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for that update.
Oh, you're welcome.
Little peek through the window into the workings of Naseem.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this is probably the most graphic of episode we've had, so
So
hopefully
far.
that's so far. Hopefully that's not a problem for
Man, this
anybody.
one's going to go through the roof with the downloads. I bet we get 6, 7 at
Maybe,
least.
maybe, especially because most of the people who listen to this are people I know. Going back to what you're saying earlier about, like, this being a terrible sex podcast, like, it was also kinda it's not just about terrible sex, it's about goofy sex, it's about things that are unexpected, and this was an unexpected event.
Awesome. And I love, man, there were tears in this. There was laughter in this. There was high fives in this, even though that was kind of off to the side. But um, it was not. I mean, this was not what porn looks like, you guys. This is a real life threesome.
Yes, and it was
This is the real deal.
nothing like porn at all. What was really funny, and this is actually probably my favorite part of this whole thing. So when we were just cuddling, when things were still PG with
Yeah.
our clothes on, we took a selfie, the 3 of us, as like a, "Hey, look, we're all together." We took a selfie. Then we took one after the fact. And the look on like, his facial expression before and after, it is so funny to compare the 2. It cracks me up because before he's just like, "Hey, whatever, I'm a dude," and then afterwards, he looks like he's riding cloud 9. It is so funny. It's my favorite picture.
That is
Uh,
amazing.
he also said later, he's like, "This was the best day ever."
Hell yeah. He
Yeah,
went
it
on a
was
mediocre date and then came home
got
to a hot ass threesome.
proud of you, Jar. Proud of you.
Me too.
So, yeah, that was my first threesome. Thank
I
you.
liked it. I liked
Thank
it.
you.
Man, shall we hit the mailbag?
Let's hit the mailbag.
Hey, Naseem, what is the difference between polyamory and an open relationship? Is poly where you both date the same person? Polygamy versus monogamy? An open relationship mean you each date other people separate from each other? Or do I have them wrong? I'm genuinely curious. Also, really enjoying the wide range of topics so far. Smiley face, smiley face.
Um, this is a good question. It's one that I get asked a lot. Actually, it's funny. My current partner here in Chicago just asked me this question the other day, and I said, "Listen to the podcast. I'm sure you'll find out." um,
Good answer.
so this is a very common question. Polyamory is a type of open relationship, but not all open relationships involve polyamory. So, an open relationship could look like you and your partner date other people separately. It could mean that you invite a third person periodically to join you. It could mean that you date together. It could mean that it's just sex. It could mean that it's sex plus romance. It could mean any kind of open door policy.
Mhm.
Okay. Polyamory is within that, and there are different types of polyamory as well. So, polyamory can look like what my husband and I do, where we are looking for other relationships outside of our own. So, I seek out people who, yes, is it sexual in nature? Sure, but that's not all it is. I because I personally believe that their love is not a finite resource. And so I feel like I have enough love to give multiple people. And that is what my husband and I are looking for, because we don't believe that one person can fulfill all of your needs, and nor should they, because that's a lot of fucking pressure on one person. Um, that's just what we believe.
Sure.
And some people will have um, a third or more partner. Um, so let's say, for example, um, my husband and I, we were both dating you, Dan. So you were his
How nice of
boyfriend.
you.
Yeah, you were his boyfriend, and you're also my boyfriend. The three of us date each other.
I haven't been anybody's boyfriend in a long time. That sounds really nice.
um, it could be where polyamory could be where I am dating somebody who also has multiple boyfriends and girlfriends. Uh, and I mean, there's like lots of ways of doing it. There's mono plus poly, um, which is a relationship that I'm currently in. Um, so I am polyamorous with my husband. My husband's polyamorous, or a person who only dates one person. They don't date anybody else except for their partner, but their partner might be polyamorous and date multiple people. That happens as well. There's so many different categories. Um, there's no right or wrong way to do polyamory, as long as everyone is uh, respectful of everyone else's needs, and communicates. Some people are what we call relationship anarchists.
Whoa.
Yeah, that one is hard for me to wrap my head around. I've been learning a lot more about it recently, but it's kind of this idea that no relationship you have is more important than the other. So, your relationship with your husband,
That doesn't sound like anarchy to me.
so your relationship with your husband, with your boyfriend, with your friend, with your family, there's no hierarchy. There's no relationship that's more important in your life than another.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That one's not for me.
that one's a new one for me to wrap my head around. I have to do a little bit more reading about it, but um that is another type of relationship dynamic as well.
I feel like if you're going to put the word anarchy in your polyamorous relationship, you've got to be at least like Dungeons and Dragons reference. You got to be like at least chaotic neutral.
I mean, you kind of are, in a way.
Well,
Or
not enough from your description.
or true neutral.
Nope.
No.
Chaos has got to be in there somewhere.
Well,
That's just me.
listen.
And listen, it's my own polyamorous anarchy relationship. All that matters is what my relationship and honesty is with the people that I surround myself with in my own anarchistic polyamorous relationship.
Look, no one can define the relationship except for the people within it.
Or the dungeon master if you're
or
playing
the
Dungeons and
or the
Dungeons and
dungeon.
Dragons.
Is that our next podcast? What's super funny is that there's this joke in the polyamorous community that the reason why people are polyamorous is so that they can have people to join their game.
Mhm.
Because like every poly person I know, with the exception of my best friend, plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Welcome, nerds.
Welcome, kinky. They're like the Venn diagram between kinksters and D&D players is a circle.
I am imagining the dudes that I last played Dungeons and Dragons with, and that fills my heart with delight.
Good. Good. Oh man, I miss playing D&D. It's been a really long time. My husband's a DM, so
Ooh.
with some friends back home, and I'm kind of sad I can't be in their games. But anyway.
Well, we should definitely play a game together sometime. I would love to do that.
It would be a lot of fun. Next question.
Hi, Naseem. I'm a dude. I was wondering if I can use saliva to masturbate. I can't really buy lubrication or anything, so can I use saliva instead?
I mean, you can. It dries out pretty quickly.
You have to slobber a lot.
You've got to slobber a lot. There are other options. Like, why can't they get lube? Because of the cost?
It doesn't say. I'm guessing between cost and access, because I'm pretty sure this dude lives with his parents.
There are other things you can use other than saliva, because saliva is not going to be very effective. Not for any amount of time. Like, there are other household items that you can use that are probably going to last a little bit longer. Dan, you might be a better person to chime in on this. Like,
well, I'm just imagining. Listen,
like,
everybody can find some
petroleum jelly.
Yeah, like
petroleum jelly. Mayonnaise? I don't know.
No. Stay away from the mayonnaise, especially on a hot day. That's gonna just create a mess. But like, find some vegetable oil or something if you need to. If you want to,
coconut oil makes great lube. I will say that I've used coconut oil as lube before.
All of that sounds
fantastic.
Fine. What I'm really interested in is trying to figure out the continuous loop of saliva into a hand that we can get, so that if you really want to use saliva, you can use it. It's weird. It's not going to last very long.
And your mouth will dry out well before.
Well, I feel like, man, maybe we can get some kind of weird sucker or something. You want to go sugar-free because you don't want sugar all over everything. But if you position yourself right and continuously drool out of your mouth while you're trying to do this, maybe hunched over a little bit, like, that could probably work.
So there are these mints. They're not really minty. They're called mints. I found one at a dispensary here, and it's meant for. They're mints that are meant to help against dry mouth, like when you're vaping or you're smoking. And
you're afraid of your mom catching you with a bottle of lube, but you're cool with her catching him with the custom ordered special mints that are clearly made for vapors.
It doesn't say it. It just says they're called Flint mints, I think.
Yeah, she's gonna think you're smoking pot all the time if she catches you with those, man. Listen, if you want to spit in your hand, you do it, and
it just won't be very good.
It's gonna be fine. People have been using that for hundreds of thousands of years, and if it feels good, do it. You're not gonna hurt yourself.
You're not
just don't rub yourself raw.
No, you can actually suck on a lifesaver. Any kind of hard candy will produce saliva.
It'll produce saliva, but it'll be sticky. Don't do that.
Then just wash off afterwards.
Sure. I mean, the whole thing is gross, and that's okay. You be you. No, nobody's judging you.
I just use some coconut oil. That's my suggestion. Coconut oil.
Yep. That'll work. Find some coconut oil. Your sister's probably got it in some suntan lotion or something. Hi, Naseem. I'm overthinking a bit here, but just started hooking up with this guy who I'm really into. We've met up twice now, and the day after our second date, I decided to try sexting him. Talked about what I want to do to him, and he responded firstly with, and then, yummy. What the fuck does this mean? I can't even tell if this is positive or negative.
Sexting is such a weird game. Um, Yummy. This is a person with no imagination.
Right?
Either they're uncomfortable and you should probably address that. Be like, "Hey man, are you okay with this? Are you not into the sexting thing? That's cool. We don't have to do that." Um, and kind of go from there. They might just not be into sexting. Like, it's not for everybody. It takes a certain level of imagination. You kind of have to be in the mood for it. And maybe he was in a wrong time and place. He could have been like visiting his grandmother for all you know. Like, maybe not an appropriate place for him to be responding in kind. So yeah, it's a tough one. Sexting is can either be really awesome or it can be really boring and kind of stupid. Like, anytime I've ever been sexting, I mean, I've done it, but like anytime I've actually been sexting somebody, I was not doing anything sexy. I was like in my pajamas, eating a pint of ice cream, watching Netflix, and just like on my phone.
Sounds hot to me.
And I think that's like 90% of people who sext, honestly. um, so yeah, I'd find out if he was actually even into it, or if he's comfortable doing it. It may not be his thing. Don't
Or
look at it as like a positive or negative. It
he
just
might be afraid to like say what he wants to say. Maybe he's scared
true. True. He may think
of
that
what you're gonna think of his perverted mind when he starts getting his thumbs rolling.
sure, because he may think that what he's gonna say is gonna be too over the top for you. So or he's afraid he's not gonna be any good at it. Uh, Sexting somebody who I think it's harder to sext people who you've never met or actually had sex with because there's no real world experience. You don't know their body, you've not been with them. It's all at this point it's all fantasy. It's basically like you're writing a smut novel.
Right.
Whereas if it's a person that you've actually been with and have some sort of relationship already, like you can build off of that when you sext them.
Yeah. And really, your first advice was, I think, on point. Ask the dude, you into this? I'm into this if you want to. If not, it's fine.
Yeah, that's number
Time
one.
for some communication.
Have a conversation. Isn't that the answer to everything?
Man, I don't know why the fuck we answer all these questions, like read them out and stuff. Go talk to somebody.
They
Why the
are.
fuck
They're
you
talking
asking
to
Naseem?
us.
Right.
They're talking to us.
Naseem doesn't know.
I'm not your partner unless I am.
I feel like that should go on some fucking promo coffee mugs.
I'm
Real
not your
sexual
partner.
with Naseem. I'm not your partner unless I am. Hey Naseem, am I a pervert for wanting to ask my girlfriend to have a threesome with a trans woman? I feel like I kind of would be the best of both worlds for both of us, or am I overly fetishizing trans women? I don't know what to do.
Listen, we're all perverts here. It's fine. It's a good thing that you ask yourself if you're fetishizing trans women.
I like that too.
Like it's good that you're thinking about that because why do you want to have sex with a trans woman? Is it the novelty? Because if that's the case, that's kind of shitty because that's a human being with human feelings and thoughts, and they're not just a vessel for your genitals. And there's some danger there in fetishizing any type of body, whether it's a trans person, whether it's a person of a different ethnicity. There is a body type. There is some danger there because you're not thinking of that person as a person, you're thinking of them as just a body, and that's kind of shitty, frankly. But I don't think it makes you I mean, like I said, we're all perverts. I would recommend that you examine what it is that you are seeking and why. I know I answer these questions with a lot of questions, but I feel like a lot of introspection needs to happen. Like, are you interested in a particular person and they just happen to be trans, or are you just going to go, quote, hunting for a person just because they're trans? That first part is, to me, more reasonable and acceptable than the second option.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know that I see that as such a hard line like you do. And maybe I need a redirection as well, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with fetishizing someone that wants to be fetishized. So if your concern is that you want to use someone's body, doesn't trans, male, female, doesn't matter, however they identify. If you want to fetishize somebody, you have to recognize that it's a person that certainly has feelings. And if you call that out in your profile, we're looking for a unicorn. This is the unicorn we're looking for. We want a trans woman that's looking to be fetishized and worshipped for a single night. That's what we are looking for. If that's you, we'd love to talk.
Sure.
Is that okay?
If you're upfront about it,
Yes.
I think if you're upfront about it, so all parties know what you're getting into, absolutely. But if you're gonna like unicorn hunt, um, without considering like the other person's desires as well,
Yes.
or do a bait and switch, that is what I have a problem with.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
if you're like posing it as, oh, I want to be in a relationship with you, or
Oh,
because it's
then you're
you,
a fuck.
then you're a shithead. Like, don't do that. If you put in your profile that this is what you're looking for, that's one thing as a couple. And also, like, I think it's healthier if all parties, both members of the couple, as well as the third, regardless of their identity, because this is also true in
It's true of
like
anyone. Like
it's true of anybody.
it
Like,
doesn't matter what the equipment looks like.
it doesn't matter what the equipment is. As the same is true in any of these situations. Everybody's got to know what is happening up front and like what the expectations are up
Yep.
front,
Yep.
as opposed to seeking somebody out, saying you're going to date them, and then it's like, oh well, you can only, because you see this a lot, unfortunately, where people will be like, okay, yeah, we want to date a bisexual woman to join our couple, but she can't date other men, or it's like a one penis policy. I could do a whole fucking podcast just on that alone. Like on the shitty things people do to quote unicorns, and how third parties are often exploited and their autonomy a lot of times is taken away because of couples privilege, but I won't get into it. To answer the question, I think it's something that you should discuss with your partner and figure out if it's something you both want to do. And if it is, if you're going to seek somebody out, be upfront about what you're looking for. You may not get a lot of hits because of what you're looking for, if it is like to fetishize somebody, because a lot of people, yeah, sure, there are people who want that and that's like their thing. But there are a lot of people who don't and might take offense to it. Just understand that those are not your people for what you want to do. You have to be tactful about it. You have to be smart, and you have to be open and honest about it with everybody.
Hi, Naseem. How do I get invited to a sex party?
Oh, that's the question.
That's it.
Online communities is my answer. So a lot of times sex parties are, it's like a, if you know these people, and you often have to like be vetted, or at least you should be vetted,
Right.
before joining like any kind of orgy or sex party or
And if they're not vetting people, you don't want to go to that sex party.
yeah, don't do that. I talk about FetLife a lot. FetLife has its problems, but there are groups where, people will say that they are having a party, but generally they want to know who you are. There are lots of communities online, including FetLife, where you can meet people. That's what I would recommend. Meet people first with a similar interest as you, who you can talk about your interests, what kind of group play you're interested in, if it's a kink thing, things like that, and that people can get to know you first and you can get to know them, because it's also like, it's one thing to get invited to a sex party, but do you want to play at that sex party, like based off of the people there? You kind of just have to make friends in the community first, and then invitations can happen. You can put yourself out there in those groups and get invited that way. That's kind of, I think, the best way is just finding like-minded individuals who are interested in the same things you're interested in, typically online, and get to know them as people first. I would avoid getting involved with random people who you just met, because there's some danger there. You don't know if they're going to be using consent. You don't know if they're going to be using contraception or any other form of protection against STDs. Like, there's a lot of predators and not the greatest people who go to these kind of events, because they're looking for people who are new and are inexperienced.
Especially if they're not vetting people. So, and correct me if I'm wrong too, it's my understanding, never been to a sex party, because I have not gotten invited to one yet.
Neither have I.
Maybe this podcast will take off and we'll get all kinds of invites.
Oh boy.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're going to get a lot more invites if you're either a couple or a single woman. If you're a single dude looking for invites to sex parties, that's going to be pretty tough to come by.
That is true. That's a lot harder to get invited.
If you're a billionaire, you might be able to swing it.
Yeah, you might be able to swing. You could buy your way in. It's unfortunate, but the truth is, single men are not often deemed as trustworthy.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Single men, people kind of keep their eyes out for them. Predators are really, unfortunately, common in these kind of communities. So people are always on the lookout for somebody who's new and single and male, unfortunately, to be a risk. Because if somebody already has a safe environment, they don't want somebody who's going to come in and fuck that up and cause problems.
Absolutely.
So it's really important, if you are a single guy, that it's important to just like make personal connections and show that you are a trustworthy individual. And then also for you to be able to vet them, to say that these are trustworthy individuals, people that you would actually want to participate in these group parties with. And now, I can't speak for like the LGBT community, because if it's a sex party that's like all male, I don't know what the answer is other than like an online community. I don't know if like going to like a gay club is the answer. That's kind of outside of my realm of experience and understanding. But again, can be dangerous to interact with people you don't know at all. So speaking as someone who has had sexual experiences with basically strangers, there's always a level of risk involved. So do your due diligence, meet people, and maybe one day you will get invited by people you can trust.
Well, I don't think there's a better place we can leave it than that, Naseem. What a great show.
It was a fun one.
I like this one.
I had a good time, even with the technical difficulties.
All right. Well, we'll do it again next week. Thank you, Naseem.
Thank you, Dan.
Naseem wants all her terrible listeners to know that although she is a medical professional, she is not your medical professional. This podcast is not medical advice. If you want medical advice, please seek out your very own healthcare provider. Terrible Sex with Naseem is part of the Terrible Podcast Network.